Welcome everybody to another episode of Hbtv's The Show with your host Harry Bugarin. And my special guest tonight is going to be Shawn Feeney. He's an artist, he's a musician, and does a multiple of different things. So if you haven't already, please do me that favor and like, subscribe, and share. And hit that little bell for any alerts when Hbtv goes live. So again, thank you for your time. It's going to be a great episode with my guest, so help me welcome him. Shawn, good evening. How are you?
Hey Harry, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. How is it out there in New York at this time?
It is dark and cold.
Dark and cold. Well, thank you for taking the time with being with me tonight on the show. And as you know, as we discussed, this is a time I bring on guests in our world community, and I highlight everything that they're doing that's positive. And what we do here on this show is just broadcast positive vibes one episode at a time. And tonight you are my special guest, and thank you very much. So I ask all my guests just to give that 30-second elevator speech of who they are. So please tell our audience attending now and the millions that will be watching later who Shawn Feeney is and what does he do.
Yeah, thank you, Harry, for having me on. I am a musician and a visual artist. I'm interested in how those two fields interrelate with each other, as well as with contemplative practices such as deep listening.
Okay. And when I do what I do with all my guests here is basically I love to learn about their journey, their experiences, and just how they evolved over the years till this point. So do us a favor, Shawn, walk us through the beginning, the inception of when did the artistry or you being an artist, when did that hit you? Was that like in elementary school, junior high, high school? And yeah, just please take us through that time.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Eastern Long Island in New York, and I've always loved to draw and sculpt, basically for as long as I can remember. And I really learned how to draw as a kid by copying comic books, which I was really into when I was young. So I got really into doing like pen and ink stuff. And as I got a little bit older into high school, I started learning more about artists from, hundreds of years ago who were making black and white artwork, but with engravings and woodcuts and that kind of thing. So I got really into like making very detailed pieces with pen and ink. So I can show you some examples as I'm talking. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Here's a piece I made in high school that was, like super detailed pen and ink, many hours just sort of at the drawing board working on this one. And I was very detail oriented and fastidious with my art back then, and it really took a long time to do this kind of thing.
So take me through your mindset, or like what is your message here? Because from what I love art, as far as like urban art, like hip hop, graffiti, different characters like that. I love anime and things like that. So what I see when I see those type of art is just what's there right in front of my face. Well, what's in front of my face right now, it kind of looks like some Walking Dead stuff. You know what I mean? like this is before The Walking Dead, but I mean like then you got, it seems like there's some pipes in the background. There's like, I'm gonna say he's a giant with some chains, and these guys are all chained up. So what was going through during this time when you were creating this piece of art?
Yeah, I was definitely in my angsty high school phase here, and I guess my thinking with this piece was maybe these people who are sort of blindly following some kind of leader in some kind of a industrial nightmare zone.
Yeah.
But again, very inspired by the sort of comic book kind of stuff I was into at the time.
What kind of comics, like which comics were you kind of reading, or did you like lean towards? Because I loved all the growing up, all the Marvel stuff in the DC,
Yeah.
but for yourself, like that can look more like Spawn or something,
Yeah, yeah.
from that time. Like, what were you gravitating to during that time?
Yeah, I was really into X-Men. That was my favorite. And then, yeah, when Image Comics came along and Spawn and all that, I was really
Yes,
into that.
yes.
This was the time when they were starting to call things graphic novels and trying to take it more seriously as an art form. Bernie Wrightson is an artist I really loved. He did, very detailed pen and ink stuff. He did illustrations for Stephen King books, which I was also into at the time. So,
No, that's great. And again, you guys are watching HBTV, the show with your host Harry Bugarin, and my special guest tonight is Shawn Feeney. Thank you guys for watching. I see a couple guys here on the live stream. If you guys at any point have any questions for Shawn, go ahead and chime in the live chat. I'll be monitoring the live chat, and I'll give those questions out to him. But going back to this time, Shawn, like the detail on that, right? Like I've doodled in class. I'm gonna say I'm a professional doodler. I'm not gonna even lie. I can doodle, but the stuff that you just did there. I mean, that I don't know if that's 10th, 11th, 12th, or even freshman year. Like, were you taking like art classes before that? Like, I remember on Channel 5, there was a guy who would draw like Popeye and stuff like that when I was a kid. But were you taking like formal classes to do like sketches or paintings or drawing, with charcoal or ink and things like that?
it was really just the high school art classes I was in. I didn't really have any specialized training besides that. I just kind of had a knack for it as a kid,
Yeah.
and then kind of took it upon myself to study in that style that I was really felt gravitated towards.
Yeah. Did you end up making any comics yourself during high school, or like was somebody out there, like your art teachers, one of your art teachers, like, Shawn, you kind of cool at this stuff. You might want to enter this or do this. Like, did anybody like pretty much help you foster and continue that fire, for your art?
Yeah, I had a very encouraging high school art teacher who was great. My parents were always supportive, getting me art supplies and all that.
Oh, nice.
And I actually did come up with some of my own comic book characters in high school, and I drew a few pages, but
Yeah.
I never really, made a full thing. Because in high school is actually when I also really fell in love with music, and that's when I decided I really also wanted to pursue that.
Yeah.
And so that was like relatively later in life, even though I was still a teenager.
Yeah.
I started taking piano lessons late in high school, and my teacher, she was teaching little kids, and I was like the only older kid she would take on.
Yeah.
I started teaching myself bass guitar, and this was like early 90s, so I was really into bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Rage Against the Machine,
Nice.
Tribe Called Quest,
Yes.
Sepultura, so I ended up playing in a couple metal bands. So
Oh.
here's a couple photos of me from back in the day. I had like, the long hair, and then I
Yeah.
had no hair.
Ah.
But I got really into playing bass guitar and, writing music for rock bands. I was also starting to get into even electronic music on my old Commodore Amiga.
Oh, the Amiga, baby. I love it.
Yeah,
I love
old
it.
school.
I think my cousin had the 64 at that point.
Yes. Yeah,
But the Amiga, yeah, that was the upgrade.
yeah, totally.
So, yeah, Nirvana. Yeah, honestly, I'm a Pearl Jam guy.
Yeah, me too.
At the same time, I guess I gravitated more to Pearl Jam than Nirvana. But you talk about those bands, and it just shot me to The Crow. I think the soundtrack for The Crow with all those bands that you mentioned, I think it was just one of the best that can stand the test of time. So great, man. So you're doing art, you're doing you got into music, and we just saw some of that stuff. And the only reason why I ask is, who stoked that fire, who did it, and that's great that your parents were able to support you in that. I used to DJ when I was a kid. right? I used to DJ and I used to play video games. And I tell people all the time, man, like, you know what? My mom, she told me, go to school, get a job, and just go through that track. DJing will never get you anywhere. Video games will never get you anywhere. So, at one side I'm thinking like, you're right, Mom, it's cool. This is just for fun, hobby. But geez, man, like now these guys are doing, $1 million sets. These guys are creating different type of things for video games. So I'm not saying it's too late. I mean, I could always go back and try, but I think that's great that you had great supporters with you. Not saying that my parents weren't supportive. They just thought a different track for me to do versus this stuff. So good, you're doing that. This is high school. I saw your work. You're good with it. At what point are you saying, this? I want to get deeper into this. I want to learn more. Maybe and I don't know your background as far as education, but maybe when you went to university, you did major in art. So walk us through that. What was the mindset in high school and going through that for you?
Yeah, I thought I would go to an art school, but then as I got more into music, I wanted to be able to study both at university. So I was fortunate enough to get into Harvard. And once I got there, I realized that, studying both music and art would have been a bit too much. So I decided to just focus on music. And while I was there, I did feel a little out of place there, honestly, but I was very lucky to meet a bunch of my fellow classmates who are also really creative, artistic musicians, including Rosalind Ree, who you've also interviewed on the show here. And so I learned, so much from them. I really tried to take that time to immerse myself in as much music and different traditions from around the world as I could. So, I was playing in another metal band and a free improv group. I played bass in a live hip hop group. I was composing music for student theater. Nice. I was getting deeper into electronic music. And so by the time I was a senior for my thesis, I decided to do an electronic music thesis. And the summer before my senior year, I spent in Australia, and I brought an audio recorder and went into rainforests in Queensland and recorded the sounds of, birds and bugs and stuff in the rainforest. And I used all those sounds as the raw material for my piece, which I wanted to make like an electronic music rainforest kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I presented the piece in actually a theater space rather than a music hall, because I wanted the audience to kind of have that experience of being surrounded by the music. And so in the space, there was actually 8 channels of audio. And so I had loudspeakers at different altitudes in the room. There were headphones hanging from the ceiling. So, the audience, they could lie down on the ground, they could move around, they could put the headphones on. And so that, the listener then could help direct their own listening experience of the piece, depending on where they went in the room and, how close they were to various speakers and headphones. So that was kind of one of my first explorations of how the listener can be inside of a musical experience.
That's a really cool experience right there. Is that something that you were able to bring back here or even present that? I don't know, man, like maybe at a museum space or something like that, where people were able to experience that after your senior thesis type of thing?
Yeah, unfortunately not. It would be really nice to kind of recreate it. But I did perform it, I think, over the course of 2 days, like back to back, just lots of shows to give people as many opportunities as possible. And I did make like a stereo mix down that, people can just listen to on their own.
Wow, Australia. What year was that? And number 2, you talked about bringing a recorder of some sort, your equipment. What was your technology going into to that rainforest?
Yeah, this was 1999, and I was using a mini disc recorder.
Nice.
It's a now obsolete technology, but I was there. I actually got a summer job for this travel guide called Let's Go, and I got the route in Australia, just so I could, find a way to get there to record the rainforest.
That's really cool. I think I I don't know where you got your mini disc from, but I know in that region in Japan and that area, the mini disc was hot. That's where everybody was having it. When I was there in Japan, like a lot of my roommates and everybody else had that mini disc, that Sony, and I was like, wow, this is great technology. So again, you guys are watching Hbtv, the show with your host Harry Bugarin. And my special guest tonight is Shawn Feeney. We got a couple more people in the chat. We got my sister, she's saying hi everyone. We got Derek Matoyer. That's my guy right there, music producer himself. And he chimed in as well when we were talking about video games and stuff like that. He said video games industry in 2018 became bigger than the music and movie industries combined. And we have one, Kelly Feeney, and she commented, Pearl Jam. Yeah, is that your sis? Or
that's my sister. Hi, Kelly. Yeah. And Pearl Jam, yeah, for sure, was a big influence for me too.
Yeah, well, Kelly just got 2 points up for Pearl Jam right there. Love it. If you guys haven't watched Pearl Jam 2020, I believe that's the name of the documentary. Just go check that out. That was a good one. So, experiences in Australia. You're on that travel. So walk us more. Like what else happened after that?
Yeah, after graduation, I got a fellowship to spend a year in Europe studying music. So I spent half the year in London studying electronic music, and then the other half in Dublin studying traditional Irish music. And I've got Irish ancestry, so it was really great to be able to spend some time there. Met a lot of young Irish musicians. MIT at the time had their Media Lab Europe in Dublin at this old Guinness factory. And they let me volunteer there and set up like a little electronic music workstation, which was really fun. And so then when I went to London, this was like year 2000. I was really into a lot of the electronic music that was coming out of that part of the world at the time. So I got to see Aphex Twin perform, which was really amazing. And it was like the first experience I can remember of, like, he would play like certain sounds and notes and I would feel resonate in different parts of my body. Like I would feel like just my nose moving or just my chest cavity. And it was like this kind of sonic massage. And so I really experienced how with sound and music, you can, really hit the different resonant frequencies of spaces and different bodies by what you're playing.
And that's amazing you say that, because, now that I'm thinking about it, when I was a kid, right, and I'm going back to DJing with my guys, and one of them was Derek Matoyer, who's on the live feed with us. But you're right. I would stand in a room as we're doing sound checks, right, and the sound from those speakers, especially from those bass bottoms, man, they would just punch and hit you, right, and they'll just hit you right here, and it was like, wow, this is the feeling I love. This is the feeling of I want to feel all the time with music, and to a certain sense, and we'll get to more of that on the third part of our interview. But as Bob Marley said, in one of his songs, one good thing about music, when it hits you, you feel no pain, right? In some cases, he's right, in most cases, but that's another story. But yeah, you just get this great feeling anytime it when you hear a groove from your childhood, and you're like, man, this is it. You get that feeling. It's really good. It resonates through your body, like you said. And I believe that music, in a sense, is one of the last, if there are any, time machines for us to bring us back, bring back your memory, bring back those feelings just by hearing that sound. So again, you guys are watching Hbtv, the show. Your host, me, Harry Bugarin, and my special guest tonight is Shawn Feeney. And we're just walking through his journey and going through basically his timeline, what has inspired him, what has moved him to keep going with his passion and his love for art and music. So Shawn, not gonna stop you. You're still going. You're still going at this. Like, keep us going. You're telling us this journey about how you're able to hit different continents, man, different countries to study your love of music. And tell me something about electronic music. How and why did you gravitate toward that genre, I guess, versus you started with the live music with the bass, which is very cool, love it. But tell us a little bit more about the electronic music. And my first introduction to that is that Africa Bambata track, right?
Yeah.
Planet Rock, which, as you know, stems from the European artists from them, right? So, what for yourself, like, what did it, why did electronic music draw you in that direction?
Yeah, I think when I first got into it in high school, it was because, I immediately loved kind of making up my own tunes on the keyboard. And by getting it into the computer, now I can, record what I'm doing, and I can, really compose different layers and put pieces together. So as I got deeper into electronic music, like, you really have so much control over what you can do with the sound. And I think by the time we got towards, year 2000, with those kind of artists like Square Pusher and Aphex Twin, and the production quality was so amazing of just, full spectrum control over the audible range for humans, that as a composer, it's really exciting to be able to have that kind of control. And, coming from it also as someone who likes to draw and sculpt, it felt like sculpting sound. I guess that's the closest I can describe it from my perspective.
I mean, do you feel any different when you compose with your live instruments versus, the electronic stuff that you do?
Yeah, I'd say I kind of have two approaches I go to when I'm composing. One is like I'll hear something in my head, and I want to just realize it out into the world. And usually the easiest way to do that is to get my instrument and find it. Or maybe, the other approach is almost more like an archaeologist, where you're just exploring and you're digging around and you find something that maybe you couldn't have come up with just, in your head. And so sometimes it's better to do that on an instrument. Sometimes if you have a clear idea, you can go right to the electronics or the computer and generate what your vision is.
Yeah, it's just amazing now the technology that's available to people. I mean, artists and home producers, if you want to call them that. Just the leaps and bounds it's gone since let's just say 1996, 1997, 98 when you're using that technology with a mini CD. But I mean, you're probably using, I don't know, FL, maybe Fruity Loops or something else like that during that time. And now you got like the Logic Pros and the native instruments and Ableton Live, like, all that stuff. So it's amazing how much, technology as far as like producing with the music and the sounds and electronic music has gone. We got a couple more guys here in our chat. You got one, Paul Friedman. He said that you've been in this creative space since middle school, and you got a great sister here. She said you've been a great big brother and introduced her to a lot of music in high school. And James is watching, and he says, "Hi, Uncle Shawn." So testament already. Shawn Feeney, man, a great guy right there. So. All right, so you're doing this. You found your electronic music. You've seen both sides now. Now you're getting that experience. Now you're getting more exposure. Now you're getting more motivated. So where are you taking this now? Like where are you seeing yourself or wanting to take this stuff now?
Well, I was still very much interested in the hands-on approach to music as well. So I did my Master of Fine Arts actually in New Zealand, in Auckland, the University of Auckland, because I found a program there called Intermedia, which was created by a sound sculptor named Philip Dadson. And he, is really influenced by the geology of the Pacific region and the musical cultures there. And so I was really excited to work with him and really kind of get more hands-on with making instruments and things. So he would make things like, I'll show you here. This is one of his installations in Auckland called Conference of the Drums, which is basically huge slit drums, which are hollowed out and sculpted tree trunks, which, you'll find in a lot of musical cultures in that area of the world. Yes. And, and he put in like some pieces of wood and metal that you could play, and it was up on this hilltop. So me and the other students got to kind of co-create a piece up there overlooking the water. It was really beautiful. And so actually although I was getting into that, I was still interested in electronic music. And again, this was early 2000s, so internet was still relatively new,
Yeah.
So for my final project there, I created a simultaneous concert in Auckland and in Austin, Texas. So my good friend Hatim Belimani was in Austin, and I built a little software interface that could take, the basic information from like a musical keyboard and generate animated visuals from it. So it looked like this. So it would make just these basic shapes, and so like you would get a note, and then the higher the pitch of the note, the higher the shape is on the screen, and the longer you played the note, the bigger the shape that got generated would be, and the volume of the note corresponds to the different colors. So basically, it was a kind of real-time visualization of the music being played. And so what I was playing in Auckland for the concert was being visualized in Austin. And then Hatim was sort of reading that as a sort of graphic musical score and responding to it. And what he performed was getting visualized for me in my location in Auckland. So we had this sort of like audio visual feedback loop going on as we were performing.
So many levels to what you just said right there. I mean, what I saw on that screen was probably the Matrix code or some sort. You know what I mean? I mean, geez, dude. Like, first of all, who creates an audio interface and, gets it out to Austin, Texas in the year 2000? I mean, sheesh. Did you, I hope you patented that or you put that to somebody. Because, maybe, I don't know, man. M Audio or Focusrite can use somebody like you in doing that. But I think that was cool that you did that, and it's amazing that you were out there in New Zealand and love New Zealand. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but me and you offline. But New Zealand, one of the best places I've ever been to in the world. Haven't been to a lot of places, but just something about that place was like the energy, the vibes. The people, especially the indigenous people, the Maori people that we were able to meet and visit in Rotorua with some of the tribes out there. Were you able to make it out to Rotorua by chance and check out the redwoods and those areas there?
Yeah, I got to travel around a little bit, through the North Island and the South Island. And, that was shortly after those Lord of the Rings movies came out too. So, they were all filmed there. So It was amazing just, seeing these spectacular, vistas and, not many people relative to, the amount of land. So it just really felt like wide open and just gorgeous.
I love that picture on the hill. You talked about the instrument maker. I'm sorry, I forgot his name.
Philip Dadson, yeah.
Philip Dadson, those instruments there were made out of, I guess, like hollow tree trunks or hollow trees. And you're right. A lot of the Cook Islands, and you get down to Samoa, you get down to Tahiti, they have those drums, right, that are hollowed out and they hit on it with sticks. The Tahitian ones are called toeres. It's just interesting and it's very, very cool to see that though they're different islands, they have a lot of similarities, with their cultures, their music, and their instruments and things like that. So amazing that you had a chance again to go to New Zealand and do that. What brought you to that program as to any other programs?
Well, from the Harvard, I actually got a grant to study overseas for my graduate program. I think they just wanted to get me out of the country, maybe. But as I was looking at different international programs, that Intermedia really, spoke to me because it was this sort of, combination of visual art and music.
Okay, cool. Just looking at our chat here, we have somebody else watching in your family. And my eyes are going bad. I'm getting old, but I think it's let me try this. Lalita Natara.
Yeah.
Did I pronounce that right?
Lalita Nataraj. That is my partner Nirmala's sister.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for joining us. And she's saying the family is watching all the way here in California, and we appreciate you, Shawn. So
Wonderful. Thank
that's what's
you.
going on. So no, that's very cool. So after your New Zealand experience, what was going on then for you after that?
So I then moved to Austin, Texas,
Hmm.
where my friend Hatim was at the time, and I found a really great creative scene there. Lots of great artists and musicians. One of the projects I put together there was a group to perform this improvisational game piece that was created by the composer John Zorn, and this piece is called Cobra. And the way it works is you have a group of improvising musicians sort of sitting in a semicircle, and in the center there's like a prompter, sort of a conductor person, and they've got all these cards with different symbols on them, and the cards indicate different things like totally change what you're playing, or imitate what another musician is playing. So it's this really cool way that indicates how the musicians can interact with each other without telling them exactly what to play. And it's a lot of fun. As you can see, we gathered musicians from all different genres: classical players, rock players, Indian classical, and then just a few Austin eccentric people.
Yeah.
But we were putting on shows every month for a while, and it was a lot of fun.
I've never been to Austin, but I heard it's a huge music scene. Is it a college town? Is that a am I saying that correctly? And the music scene is kind of like what you would see like in Memphis or something. Is that how that goes there?
Yeah, I think so. I think it has the largest college campus in the country, actually, with UT Austin,
Hmm.
and lots of clubs, and yeah, just a really cool creative scene altogether.
What a great place to get inspired and get all those vibes from different people and collabing with different people and just I don't know. I think that's you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably where a lot of your molding came from as well, with being in those scenes there, like Austin.
Yeah. I even I developed a similar improvisational piece, which I can show a little later,
Yeah.
that I got to perform in different venues, and yeah, definitely grew from there. But I got to a point where I did kind of want to be like in the big city of New York,
Mm.
where closer to where I'm from. So I did eventually move back and move to Brooklyn, and I ended up getting a job with a classical music publisher called
Mm.
G. Shermer.
Okay.
So, then I found myself a bit more immersed in the classical music world. It's a bit more of
Wow.
like the kind of stuff I was studying in college. And I was, helping to promote their catalog and their composers, going to a lot of classical music shows. But, I'll still, playing rock music and stuff. I joined a band called Only Son, which was the band of my friend Jack Dishel. And I played bass in that group. And Jack is married to the singer-songwriter Regina Spektor. So we also got to play some gigs with her, do a little tour with her, and played with some great guys in that band, and then really had a lot of fun with them.
Nice, man. You full circle, man.
Yeah, globetrotting.
Classical,
Yeah,
yeah, just going. I mean, circle in your music, where you've been traveling, your experiences, and back here to New York. So you get to New York, you get to that classical gig, you're doing that. Like, so where does the art and music take off from there?
yeah. Well, I was in the city for almost 2 years, and it was enough time for me to realize I actually didn't really love living in
Mm,
the big city. It's like loud, hectic, and all that. And by that point, I had been in sort of many different realms of the music world: classical, rock, experimental. And I was really seeing the challenges of trying to make a living, you know, in any of those fields, really. And so I at that point in my life, I made the decision that I'd rather make my economic living through my visual art skills than with my music, and make my weird music on my own time and
yeah.
not have to worry about commercializing it. So I decided to move back to Eastern Long Island, close to where I grew up. I moved in with a good friend of mine, and I ended up my next job. I was a civilian forensic artist. like a police sketch artist.
Okay.
And so then I was, interviewing crime witnesses and, based on what they were telling me and looking at photographs I was showing them, I was making composite drawings, hopefully looking like the person they saw. So here's a few examples of, the pieces I did there. And one thing I really learned from this experience was to really loosen up as an artist. As I showed before, I was like very detail oriented. And with this kind of thing, like you really had to move quickly, because you're interviewing someone, you can't be there all day with them. So I, really learned to loosen up and become faster with my sketching. And I also took that opportunity to, just improve my knowledge of, facial anatomy for drawing. So I did a lot of studies from the mugshot database of, faces and facial features. So, here's a bunch of ears that I drew. I did studies of mouths, as well as noses. And all this really helped me internalize, facial anatomy and how it varies, as people age. And it was an opportunity for me to improve my own drawing skills as well.
Those are amazing, man. I'm sorry. Like, really. Like, you put me in the same position, and I think I'm going to be producing some caricatures of the suspects that like you see at Disneyland or something like that. Like, okay, is this your guy right here? You sure? I mean, those are amazing, man. Like, seriously, like, and that's the thing that I love about my guests on this show is that, I bring people on, one, they're positive people, they're doing their positive thing, in our world community, but they're also doing something that I would love to do, but I can't. So I kind of got to live through you guys and talk to you guys and find out like what it takes and what you guys do. And most are God-given talent stuff, but a lot there's some that they work on it every day. They sharpen their skills every day, and I think what you've done or what you do is great stuff, man. It's amazing stuff. I love the art. I mean, I've seen your stuff from your high school days and progressing, from the music, from the drawings, from the portraits that you're doing there. It's really cool. So again, guys, you guys are watching Hbtv, the show where we do nothing but broadcast positive vibes and have positive folks on the show. And my special guest tonight is Shawn Feeney, and we have a lot of his family here as well. So great stuff, man. Great stuff. Circling around, you're doing your music, right? You're doing your music, going to different places, hitting New York. You know what I'm saying? Then you get this gig here. Any other experiences away from the music and all that stuff that you got into during this whole journey of what you're getting to this point?
Yeah, well, speaking of positive vibes, I was learning these new skills in forensic art and composite art, and I was trying to think of like, is there something I can do that I can use these skills for something maybe more positive than just drawing criminal suspects. So I came up with this idea for a project I called BFF, and so with that I had people submit photos to me through my website. They could send me a photo of themselves and a friend of theirs, and then I drew a composite of the two using those same skills that I learned for combining faces. So I accepted 64 pairs of friends that I drew. And then from that series of 64 drawings, I then went through and like made combinations of the combinations, and I kept, going until I finally got down to one drawing that you can sort of trace all of its facial features through back to, the photographs. And I was doing these at, letter size drawings, same as I was doing at my job. And so here's a a quick video that shows a bunch of the drawings I did for that, and these are all just people from all over the world submitted to this project. I had people from all different countries, and here's another way of showing it. Like this shows how the photos on the left would eventually kind of morph all the way to that final face on the right. And it was a total of 127 drawings. This project took me way longer than I thought it would. It ended up taking like intermittent work over like the course of 10 years before I actually finished it, because I was using charcoal rather than normal pencils, which just takes forever. But again, got to hone my skills a bit more with that medium and my understanding of facial anatomy. And it was also something I was experimenting with, this idea of gift economy. So the people who sent me their photos, I ended up sending the drawing to their friend as a gift. So it was sort of like a way of, getting a gift from a friend and a stranger at the same time.
Man, I love that. I love that. I don't know if you coined that, the gift economy, but
No.
yeah, that was amazing about
Thank you.
what you just did. I was going to ask you, like, man, when did you have time to do all that stuff? And you just broke it down 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And the fact that the end product was the gift, part of being the gift economy, blows me out the water, brother.
Thanks.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, amazing work right there. So, just a little bit more on this before we transition into one of your other projects that you have done and released. On your website, you talk a little bit. There's a little bit in your bio about working for Lucasfilm,
Mm-hmm.
right? Tell us about that experience and what was going on there for you.
Yeah, well, at that time, I had a lot of friends who were living in San Francisco. I'd visited them a couple times, and I really kind of felt called to be out there. So I ended up, once again, kind of packing my bags, driving cross country, moved to the San Francisco area, and I started, really trying to put more of my own artwork out there into the world. And after a year of being out there, I was lucky enough to get a job at Industrial Light and Magic, which is the visual effects studio at Lucasfilm. And I was an assistant in the art department. So it was real like entry level, but it was still in the art department. I was surrounded by just incredible artists and art directors and concept artists, because I've always loved, like creature design, from growing up in the 80s and stuff. Industrial Light and Magic, of course, helped make Star Wars and, a lot of, that kind of stuff I grew up with. And so it was really cool, to be in that building with all the props from the old movies and,
Wow.
Work with everyone there. Because I was an assistant, I didn't get to do too much of my own concept art, but I did a little bit. Okay. For example, this was a piece I worked on. This was for the film Noah, which was made by Darren Aronofsky. And so this was a concept for these creatures in the film that help Noah build the ark. In the film, they ended up looking completely different than this. But he wanted like these 6-armed giants. And so this was something I made like using 3D sculpting software and Photoshop, because we were, basically we were doing a lot of, digital concept art in the department there. So, I learned a lot, but, eventually I got a little frustrated there because, it was really long hours, long commute from Oakland where I was living. And another project I was doing at the time was I started for Halloween's. I called it Memorial Jack-o'-lanterns, where every Halloween, to honor a musician that I loved who had died that year, I did like a sculptural carving into a pumpkin of a portrait of the musician. So, for example, this was one I sculpted of Ravi Shankar, who is an Indian classical musician, a sitar player.
Yeah.
This was another one I did of Pete Seeger, the singer-songwriter. And so, I was just making these, once a year. I was putting them on my website, and, while I was working at Industrial Light Magic. And I got reached out to by this company that was making a new television show for Food Network called Halloween Wars. Okay. And they invited me to be a pumpkin carver on this new show and to work with a cake artist and a candy artist. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really think of myself as like a food artist. I didn't really watch any of these shows. And, but I was very lucky to end up on a really great team on that show with cake artist Karen Portaleo and sugar artist Susan Nodder. And it was a really intense experience. Like this was the final piece we made. I carved this 1,200-pound pumpkin into like this one-eyed monster with like
Wow.
a giant cake monster on top of it. And
Wow.
it was just a crazy, crazy experience. But we actually ended up winning. And, I found myself kind of finding these opportunities in this culinary art world. And so I decided to leave my job there and see what I could do with my creative pursuits, doing things with fruit and vegetables. So this was a piece I made for an event out in California. This was a watermelon dragon made out of 14 watermelons. And it was like a camp out event. So we took all the fruit out of the watermelons and we were able to feed it to the campers and stuff. And, it was a lot of fun. This was a piece I did for the De Young Art Museum in San Francisco for a show that had to do with Georgia O'Keeffe. So this is a portrait of Georgia O'Keeffe in Hubbard squash and broccoli. And, and then I got to meet some people at the museum there. So, it was another unexpected kind of twist in my life. And I followed that for a couple of years and had a lot of fun. And again, was able to develop my sculptural skills a bit more.
So one thing, if you guys didn't win with that 1,200-pound pumpkin, then I don't know what the judges were looking at the first place. I'm just saying. I was like, what? And then number two, we got a guy here. Two guys here, actually. My guy, Michael Fajardo, he's saying he's enjoying hearing your journey, Shawn. Amazing talent from music to art. And then we got Daniel G., who said, at a festival, I once got to watch Shawn carve out a 12-foot dragon out of a bunch of watermelons, and that's exactly
there you go.
What you showed there. So thanks for chiming in, Daniel. Appreciate that. And man, like for me, just looking at some of the images that you just showed, I would think those things were photoshopped, man. I'm like, man, this guy's Photoshop skills is great, but you actually carved those things. Wow, that's crazy. You give me a knife, I'm carving out 2 eyes, a nose, and a crooked smile. That's that would be my jack-o'-lantern right there. So again, guys, you guys are watching Hbtv, the show, with your host Harry Bulgarian, and my special guest tonight, man, the multi-talented Mr. Shawn Feeney. So we can talk about all this, a lot of stuff forever, but we got some limited time here. What I want to do is really transition to one of your current projects. One of your current projects, you just released an album. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's talk about the album, what it took for you to produce and compose those tracks. And yeah, man, just please tell us about it. I love the sound, so I'd love to share that with our viewers.
Yeah. Thank you. I put out an album this summer called Thin Places. And it all grew out of, while I was living in San Francisco, I also took a course there called Sound, Voice, and Music in the Healing Arts, which was at the California Institute of Integral Studies, put together by a singer named Silvia Nakkach. And that course, it was a really great complement to, the undergraduate, academic music studies I did, because this was much more about how sound affects the body and, our sense of well-being and health. And that introduced me to, these instruments like singing bowls and tuning forks. And I really got into that. And I especially felt drawn to the quartz singing bowls. And so I really got into that then. And then, I later moved to the Hudson Valley where I am now. And I, was doing sound bath, sound journey kind of events here in the Hudson Valley. And so this was my setup for those things. So I'm using, quartz singing bowls, Himalayan singing bowls, different kinds of bells, guitars, things like that. Again, with my friend Hatim and his partner, Casey Carr, we did a weekend retreat for people, a sort of sound and silence retreat. And, did a really long sound journey with all these instruments. And, and I played the bowls there as well. And so as I was, performing these kind of improvisationally, it was giving me ideas for compositions. And so the pieces on my album really kind of grew from those various experiences. And so the album is centered around music that I wrote on the quartz bowls, but a lot of them have other instruments, on the tracks as well. And the term thin places means like areas in the world where it feels like you're sort of between worlds, like you're between this world and some other, world beyond. And it's often used in places in Ireland and the UK. And one of them is the Skellig Rocks in Ireland. And this is one of my photos of the Skellig Rock is on my album cover here. I again got to go to Ireland to do some mixing on this album through a property owned by the Deep Listening Institute. And I was really lucky to spend some time there. This was me recording the album at my friend Tyler Wood's home studio, Sauce Farm Studios. And then this is in Ireland, the southwest coast there. I got to do some mixing on everything. And I just had this feeling a lot when I played the quartz bowls of it almost feels like it's creating a kind of thin place. It really kind of transforms the atmosphere as you play, and it's very relaxing and otherworldly.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you mentioned before, how stepping back a bit when you were in Europe and you saw one of those producers or DJs and manipulating the sound and how it was able to, as you said, like hit different frequencies and hit different parts of your body in different ways, right? So pretty much that would be the same way, the same feeling, the same type of like the frequencies that hit the body when you play those instruments yourself, and do you believe that does it help with the healing process for people?
Yeah, I mean, there's something going on called entrainment, which is about our bodies and the various rhythms within our brain waves, our respiration rate, our pulse. They're all affected by the rhythms of things in our surroundings, and and those rhythms will entrain to those things. So, for example, if you are in a club with the fast pumping bass, your body is we tend to just move and dance and entrain to that rhythm. Whereas if you're listening to something with a much slower rhythm that's very steady and not much variation, then that will entrain our bodies and these various rhythms into a more calm state of being. So these instruments that I'm playing for this kind of thing, like the quartz bowls, they're putting out a very kind of steady, simple waveform, as well as instruments like the Shruti box, which is very rich in overtones, but still very kind of a steady state thing. It's activating the different cilia in our ears that correspond to all the different sonic frequencies, and entraining the various biorhythms to a more calm state of being.
I mean, you talk about that, and what two things that shoot in my mind is, I don't even know if I'm saying this right or going to say it right, but how you're saying it's like a certain frequency, kind of like the, I think they're called Gregorian chanting, like how they do that, right? So those instruments that you play kind of resonate the same feel. And then number two, this is how my mind works. You talk about how you love creatures and the animations of that and the puppets. One thing that brings to mind is the Dark Crystal. When they're chanting like that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like when the chanting goes on, and you made me think about Dark Crystal. Like it's that steady tone. It does give me that feeling of relaxation and like we discussed earlier, you and me offline, like using that type of music or that type of sound for me to help with sleep, because nowadays my sleeping patterns are all crazy. But it does help me with that, and I love honestly just when I'm on projects, when I'm working, I hit those instrumentals, kind of like this stuff that you have, and it for me, I don't know if it's scientifically proven or maybe I'm just one of the weird ones, but it does keep me focused, and it does keep me in line with what I need to do, hearing that sound, that constant sound, in that rhythm. So I don't have anything set up, but is there something that you can just give a taste to our audience as far as any of the tracks that you got on the album? If you have something set up on your side, would that be possible?
Oh, I don't have the audio set up here, but you can always go to ShawnFeeney.com afterwards and check it out, or it's also on all the streaming services. But yeah, I also love The Dark Crystal, one of my favorite films, and and building things, and again, like putting people inside of the sound is still an interest of mine. This was another piece I made with using tuning forks, which is another instrument that makes those very kind of steady, simple sounds. This was a piece I did in a residency at the de Young Museum in San Francisco, where people could put on this helmet, and then I played it with a violin bow so they could hear these nice shimmering sounds all around them. I made this drawing that kind of corresponds to the listening experience, and then this is a photo of me playing it for people. So again, I've always been really interested in putting the listener inside the sonic experience and having that somatic experience that is hopefully gonna be beneficial for your own biorhythms.
So, through your experience and research and all that stuff, the music you're doing with that, and the example that you just showed me, any like Eastern philosophy or Eastern medicine connected to that stuff? 'Cause for me, just thinking off the top of my head, it would seem like that would be like an Eastern philosophy type of thing.
Yeah, there are lots of traditions, Tibetan chanting, mantras from various traditions from India and that part of the world. The Himalayan singing bowls, of course, come from not just Tibet, but India and Nepal and that whole region. And again, these are all ways of, if you're chanting, if you're doing a steady tone, it's that kind of getting lost in a single sound. And, a single sound actually has so many components to it and overtones that you can get involved with that, you mentioned Gregorian chant earlier. That was, very simple music, but it's actually the basis for all Western classical music. It all grew from that, of just voices singing together and making a melody in time. And all Western harmony basically developed from that idea of voices together moving in time.
Wow, amazing. That's really good stuff. Is there any? I know you just did the album, but on the horizon, are there any other projects that you're looking to get into? Anything in the works that you can kind of like talk about with us?
Yeah, well, I'm just starting my next recording project,
Oh, cool.
my next album. I'm still in the early phases, so we'll see how it develops. But even with Thin Places, there are 12 distinct tracks, but I think you can listen to it as a continuous kind of sound journey. And I think my next project may be even more of a cohesive sound journey kind of experience.
I honestly would love that senior thesis that you did. I think that's one of the coolest concepts I've ever heard about, to get immersed in that experience. I don't know, man. I think it would be cool. I think you should pitch it to the. I don't know if you've ever been to Seattle. I think it's called the Music Experience, that big music museum there. I was once there with my guy Rex. Shout out to Rex. We took a road trip actually from San Francisco. We took the one. I wouldn't do it again as far as the early part of the one from San Francisco, because it was just like an hour of turns. But we went all the way up to Vancouver and Victoria and came back all the way down. But we stopped in Seattle. Have you been to that Music Experience Museum before?
No, I've heard about it, but I've never been.
I probably stayed in there like 5 hours, and my wife and my kids were there not too long ago, last year or 2 years ago. But I was there like 5 hours, man. It was like better than Disneyland for me. You know what I mean?
Nice.
You would love it. A lot of stuff there, and I think that would be like a perfect place, for your idea, for that thesis, that music experience, to be immersed in that. So, I'm gonna tag Seattle Music Experience and get them on the Shawn Feeney Express to make sure that thing goes out there. But no, looking forward to more of those projects from you. I've listened to those tracks and thank you, and I'll definitely get the website out to people. In the video description so they can listen as well. Again, everybody, you guys are watching Hbtv, the show, with your host Harry Bulgarian, and my special guest tonight is Shawn Feeney. So, really quick, before we end up our time here, Shawn, and thank you for spending that with us. I know it's 3 hours ahead out there in New York for everybody out there who is watching on the East Coast time. Thank you. Just a couple of things, man. Like I said, I bring on guests doing their positive thing and listening to their message and their journey. I ask this of all my guests, like, for people watching this, hopefully, and I'm sure somebody will. Like, I'm getting inspired already. I want to go carve some pumpkins now. But like, for people who want to get, those young potential artists who want to kind of get in the things that you've done, or even there might be some adults out there now who've been wanting to do it but just never knew how to, or take that first step to become that artist, become that sculptor, to be, to make that music and that art. Like, what type of messages would you give us for those who wanting to delve into something like this?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I think luckily these days there's more opportunities than ever to get involved with the arts, with music, visual art. And I'd recommend anyone who's interested, really just follow your passions and your interests and your curiosity. I mean, that's really what I've done. And it's been a windy path through life, but I've always tried to, find what I'm excited about and dig deep into it, because that'll keep you inspired, and it'll keep you, improving your skills to get to the next level. And, and don't get intimidated by people who are, 30 years ahead of you, because it takes time. It takes time and practice to, evolve as an artist, as a musician. And just enjoy that journey.
Well, thank you for that, Shawn. Is there anything else off the top of your head that you would like to, tell our viewers? Any shout outs maybe you want to give out?
Well, yeah. Well, big shout out and thanks to everyone who's tuned in today, family and friends. I really appreciate that. Big thanks to you, Harry, as well, for spending this time with me and all your great questions. And yeah, I would just say, like stay safe, be mindful when you're out there these days. Wear your mask, be mindful, not just your own health, but everyone's health. We're all in this together. And thanks again for all your attention.
Well, we got one Robert Feeney here, and he says, very proud of Shawn and always amazed by the creative process and generous sharing of his talents. Rob is one of your brothers, cousins?
That's my dad. So
Mr. Feeney, the original, is right there in the chat live with us, representing and supporting Shawn here. Love it, yes. Love it. So Mr. Feeney, thank you very much for tuning in, and Shawn has been great to have on here. Who else is on here? One last thing here. It says Michael Fajardo, I'm inspired to take my craft to another level. I'm far from artistic, but I'm motivated to take that passion in my career and to a deeper level. So thank you for sharing your journey.
That's great. I appreciate that.
So Shawn, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it. It's been wonderful, to get the face to the voice and just to get to know you a little bit. Very inspiring. I love your message. I love your passion. I love what you do. I'm going to be following you. Everybody, if you haven't already, go ahead and follow Shawn Feeney at Shawn_Feeney on Instagram. And definitely, I'll get you guys that website, for his information and for his music and different projects out there. So Shawn, much continued love and success, man. And I love what you're doing. Keep it up. Keep inspiring as you do. I will be in touch definitely. Love to hear more about you in the future and do maybe like a catch up, a recap and future seasons and be on the show. And I do thank you. Thank you for your time, brother. Thank you for your time for being here with us.
Yeah,
We loved it. Everybody here loved it, and I hope you enjoyed your time here with us as well.
I did. I had a great time, and I appreciate your time as well, and taking this opportunity to showcase me and my work. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure, and shout out to Rosie for
Yes.
for hooking this up together. If you guys haven't seen Rosie's episode, go ahead and go back into the YouTube channel or visit the channel site as well. You can see Rosie's episode there. Documentary filmmaker, and she does great work as well. So you guys, Shawn, thank you very much. You stay blessed. You have a blessed work week. You guys stay safe out there in New York, and until next time, brother, I'll see you.
Thank you very much. I'll see you later.
Well, that was our guest, Shawn Feeney. Man, just an amazing journey, just very inspiring, just positive messages. I mean, man, this guy is very cool. So go out there, check him out, follow him on Instagram, show him some love, get out to his site and all that good stuff. So until next time, this is Hbtv, Harry Bulgarian, the show. We'll have another great one next week. So stay blessed, stay safe.